black slave owners. In fact, during the time of the Civil War breakout, we had a black Confederacy that fought to maintain slavery. And the guy that fed the Confederacy was named Anthony Ellis, who fed the Confederate troops when they fought in South Carolina. So that we don't want to make everything racial. The racial part comes in when you begin to look at people who have been suppressed for so long. Then we begin to really believe the philosophy of that time that said that the black man was not equal to the white man. That's when the racism and things begin to happen, which is why we saw black patriots fighting alongside George Washington during the American Revolution.
I was perplexed as to why the Ten Commandments were shown here. I mean, what's the relevance? What that had to do with the historical events and people we were looking at?
I'll take a stab at it. I'm not as in-depth as Tommy is, but I think this great country is founded on Judeo-Christian. And in everywhere we go, we always give honor to God. And so these 10 commandments are kind of our bylaws, I would say, that we guide ourselves. And then we've taken that out of the argument today, where we want the separation of church and state, and it's not working. I mean, I work with kids on a daily basis, and the most heartening thing, even when I was in my most rebellious stage with my parents, I would never, ever think of saying, I'm an atheist. Or I work at a college and they say, oh, miss, I'm agnostic. I'm like, what is that? And they're like, well, you know. I said, no, I don't know. I'm working on one student now. I mean, they're operating in a vacuum and it's not working. It doesn't work. You know, people are just trying to find some justification. So I think when we mention our 10 Commandments, we're here because God created us to be here. And I don't care what intellectual comes, because they often look silly when they try to give explanations of how God does not exist. So I think that's why David Barton does that, brings it up very to the forefront. And we have a divinity student here.
No, I just want to add to what she said. I believe in the video he was making correlations to, he was taking it back to the 1800s and then bringing it more recent, comparing the Democratic and Republican parties on moral issues about the 3/5 compromise. He was trying to say how that the Democratic Party always, reworded things. If black people were property, then that kind of justified it. And today, the same thing with abortion. If you call a baby a fetus, kind of instead of a baby, then it makes it okay to actually murder that fetus instead of a person. And so he was also talking about the 10 Commandments and other moral issues that the Democratic Party has gotten wrong in recent times as compared. And he said their track record on moral issues is pretty poor. And the 10 Commandments analogy was that poverty wasn't priority number one for the Democratic Party, but God places other moral issues above poverty, such as abortion, which is murder, and the gay marriage issue. So I believe he was making a correlation. So he takes it back in the past and he brings it relevant to today in these comparisons.
And also if we say we believe in God and go to the booth and vote contrary, we're lying. So David Barton did a pretty good job by allowing us to see the 10 Commandments, because it gives us a priority. We can't say that we're concerned about the poor, but yet we kill innocent life. We can't say we're concerned about justice and we let the criminal off death row for technicality, but we kill innocent life. And this is why he made this statement. He said, God protects the innocent and not the guilty. And today we see people being let off death row and they go out and kill again. And then at the same time we go and we promote abortion. So the Ten Commandments gives us a standard or a rule that shows us that righteousness comes from God. We don't make laws. We have to make laws in conjunction with what God has already established. And that's why we need the Ten Commandments. Because we're not a law unto ourselves. God is the law unto himself. He makes the law. And everything we do have to be in conjunction with that. And this is why when the Constitution was drafted, they had to put in there an anti-slavery, they had to make it an anti-slavery document, because if you don't believe that all men are created equal, there's no reason to have that in there. And they never use the word, they never use a race in the Constitution. They refer to slaves, free persons, and slavery, because they did not see the black person as being unequal. Later down the line, when you have the Democratic Congress who issued laws from the courts, they begin to put in things that said the black person was unequal. And this is where we get it confused. But the actual Constitution deals with God first, which the Ten Commandments deals with, and then loving our neighbor second. And that's how it is. So if we believe that, then we believe that whether a person's white or black or liberal or Democrat or Republican or whatever, we believe that we all are capable of sinning, and the only standard of righteousness we have is God's law. And that's what we must measure it by.
I'm not on the panel, but I have to stand in support of what's being said up there. A couple of objective observations. Most enlightened people do not believe in the medieval notion of spontaneous generation, that a piece of meat will automatically turn into maggots if you leave it alone. Anyone who observed objectively noticed that flies landed on the meat, laid eggs, and they became worms. They had to come from another living source. The enlightened left seems to be able to accept that principle all the way back through God's guided evolution, all the way back to, but accepting the point that God started it all. To me, to not believe in a creator is as logically and scientifically absurd as believing in spontaneous generation. The founding fathers in the Declaration of Independence and the Constitution, by implication, said that all men are endowed by the Creator with certain unalienable rights. We hold these truths to be self-evident. Implied in that is that the Creator and the belief in the Creator is self-evident. The Ten Commandments are not just a Judeo-Christian set of rules. They're like the laws of physics, the laws of the universe. Every culture, even Hammurabi's code that predates the Bible, talks about the immorality of killing, the immorality of infidelity. Even cultures that believe in polygamy believe that you need to support and be faithful to all of your spouses. Whether you believe in polygamy or polyandry, once you're married to somebody, you stay married. We've refined that thanks to St. Paul and others. But, you know, religion and the commandments are not simply a sociological phenomenon to be changed willy-nilly by the society. You can't change those anymore, as Scotty said in Star Trek many times. Captain, you cannot change the laws of physics. And the same thing is true of those universal principles that define who we are as image and likeness of God. Where we run into trouble is where we think our sectarian understanding of that is the only understanding. That's the problem in the Muslim world right now. And we have to be careful of that ourselves. Sorry, I talked too long here. My wife is kicking me.
It's not my question, though, just so you know. So, where do they get the statistics? And isn't it true that 60% of statistics are made up?
That's awesome. Statistic, right? Whose question was that? It was Aaron's. Thank you, Aaron.
Go ahead.
I don't know. That's
The statistics, well, David Barton, he is, I don't know if, you know, how many people are familiar with David Barton, but he is a world-renowned historian. He owns the most, outside of the Library of Congress, as an individual, the most documents that pertains to American history, like diaries, all those things that he was holding up, every little piece of it, he owns it. He has been collecting it, and I mean, that's just what he does. So he's took all of that information that he has, reading all of those things that none of us have time to do, as well as looking at the statistics that come out of the government. A lot of his statistics he takes from government only because although they're oftentimes skewed, because you can make a statistic say whatever you want, you're absolutely correct, depending on how you word something, but if you take the government standard of statistic, generally speaking, although it is skewed to say, it's usually skewed in a way that still makes God look good, actually, because when you take those numbers and you say, okay, well, you know that those numbers could be off a little bit, right? Like he uses 12% of the population for the abortion number. And although this video is a few years old, probably 4 or 5 years old, the high end of that is that blacks are 14% of the population and we have 38% of the abortions. He uses 12% and 35% in order to, I guess, squash a lot of the arguments that then people that are opponents of what he's saying, he's taking the low number and lowballing it all, and it's still a disgusting number. You know, you still look at it and go, oh, but then if they want to go and you can research those numbers, you're going to get those numbers straight across because you're looking at government numbers that are put out by like the CDA and different things like that, and it's an equal number.
I guess it's specifically like the numbers that are saying such portion of this nation supports this. Because I'm coming from a perspective where obviously, you know, I agree with what's being said, but I look at it, I was like, let's say, you know, someone who has the exact opposite ideology, which I really
Right.
wish we had someone in here like that, or several people. So
I do too.
Because I would love to see, you know, the conversation. But like they'll say, oh, well, you're just making up that number 80% support.
Right, and that's what I was saying. That's why he uses those government numbers outside of, you know, like if you were to go to National Right to Life, or if you go to, you know, somebody that we are agreeing with and looking at their numbers, oftentimes those numbers are going to be very different because maybe you ask the question differently. If Frederick Douglass Foundation were to take a poll of this room, obviously we were going to get a particular, because of what this room is made up of, we're going to get a particular number. Versus when the government does a study, that's why he takes those numbers for that exact reason, because then it squashes a lot of those arguments. If you are somebody who is on the opposite side, and you know, hopefully as our meetings go on, like I said, this is a 3-part series that we're doing, we will be seeing more and more people that are not on the same side, and that's what we want. We want more people because we want that diverse dialogue between people that agree and disagree, so that not only, you know, what is it, if you're in a room full of people that only agree with you, then you're not going to always get a full picture. Just like when he was talking about David, you know, you want that both sides of all arguments so that you can really have a real dialogue and get people to have a spontaneous thought, think about something that you've never thought about before. But when David Barton's using a lot of those statistics, he wants to make sure that everybody can find the same statistic and comes out with the same number. So although, you know, those government studies may not be 100% accurate, you know, when they get the studies that say, you know, 80% of America is, you know, believes that, what was it, prayer in schools, right? That's an accurate number. I mean, we can see that, but that's the number that the government comes back with, which I'm sure they don't want to put that number out. They don't. That's not numbers that they want. You know, you don't see that in USA Today and all of those things, because the only time they post those types of statistics are when they are agreeing with what they want to be put out. Otherwise, they're like, oh, we don't want that number to be seen. they tuck it away somewhere else and it's on the back page of something.
I wanted to add something about the Ten Commandments. One of the things I think David Barton was doing there was showing how the party of slavery, segregation, and the KKK, which was founded to perpetuate slavery and protect it, and they fought for it during the Civil War, then they had no moral standing, and even still today they are promoting ideas that go against the Ten Commandments, which, you know, some of them consider Moses' talking points. And I think that that's, you know, where he's heading with that, because obviously he's not done, but if that helps any.
Next question.
If anybody wanted to find out more information about David Barton, he does have a website. I don't know what, but just Google wall builders, because he's written a number of different historic novels, and like Ayesha said, he's got every single one of those documents he's held up. He owns himself. He's a real history nerd.